It says there very clearly that his father and mother ordered him by Uncle Lavan, it's Padan Aram, and he went to Padan Aram. Okay. Let's see what we can exactly.
Yeah, it's number 6.
Here,
28:6.
in 25:2, she tells him, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, Yitzchak tells him, to your mother's brother, and take from there, your mother's father, take from there a wife, and God should bless you and all that, and give you all kinds of blessings. And then, in verse 5, Vayishlach Yitzchak et Yaakov, Yitzchak sent him out, Vayelech Padan Aram, and he went to Padan Aram. So he's already come there, okay? And then we say that Esau saw also that Yaakov did what his parents wanted, and that they told him to go there by Vayelech Padan Aram, that he had gone there. This is in verse 7, 25:7. So then Esau imitated him, and he took wives from Ishmael instead of the bad Canaanites. So the question is, he's already gone. So why now say, oh, he left Beersheba?
I think when an important person leaves a base,
yes, but
such an empty base, emptiness,
it's never going to be the same.
Never goes to be the same.
Yes, that's what exactly I'm trying to show you why the rabbis had to say that. If I would just say he left Israel and came to America, wound up in America. So you can't make any drushes on him. I'm simply telling you what happened for the story here. But if I already told you he went to America, then all of a sudden I say he left Israel and went to America. You already told me he went to America. You follow? So at the end of last week's portion, it already said he went to Padan Aram.
It
He's
doesn't
there.
say that he
He's
went.
there.
Doesn't say he arrived there.
All right, but they certainly wouldn't start that he left Beersheba. He's at least on the way.
On the way, he stopped off.
Yeah, it says he went to Padan Aram.
Doesn't say who he gia.
No, I'll grant you that. Even if you want to interpret it that way, which I'm not sure, you could say he was on the way, but at least it's after he left. So now you can't say he left. You follow her?
Right, yeah.
So the problem is, why does the Torah suddenly say Yaakov left Beersheba? Of course he left Beersheba. He was on the way to Padan Aram. So therefore, it's to tell you something special.
That he's a wandering Arabian.
Well, we'll see what it's to tell you. It can tell you a few things. One thing it can tell you is that he left from Beersheba significant. You know why? Because they weren't in Beersheba. They were in Hebron. So if he left Beersheba, the Torah is telling you, he first stopped to pay a visit to Beersheba, the place of his grandfather, where his grandfather had done all his work, where God appeared to him when he was about to leave the land. And he thought this was an opportune place to consult with God, to maybe get some kind of vision as to the success of his journey, whether he should really leave the land. Even though his parents told him to. It's a highly questionable thing. His father was told never to leave the land. His parents don't claim prophecy here. They just told him their best advice was to leave. Get out before Esau kills you. And Yitzchak didn't know about that. Reverse says Rivka didn't want to worry him. So she didn't tell him that. She just said, he's got to get married to folks from the old country. All right, we're Israelis already. But I'd really rather have my son marry an American boy. He'll live here. My daughter an American boy. All right. People, you could very simply explain it. They felt more comfortable with the folks back home. And the folks back home would join their religion. They would join the local Canaanite religion. And so forth. There's many reasons for it. They may have been better people, even though they were both idolaters. But anyway, so you can say very simply, it's telling us that he went there to try to get some sense, some inspiration from that very place where his grandfather had left Israel. He had to go down to Egypt when there was famine. So Yaakov went there too to see if he gets some inspiration to visit his grandfather's place. That's one thing.
That can also have something to do with how he...
No, the other thing, Rashi
about stones and how he lied down.
That comes later.
That comes later.
I know.
Yes, Danny.
Probably the reason why Rivka and Yitzhak sent Yaakov away to that place rather than have him marry a Canaanite girl is because before we became the chosen people with Abraham, we were already a separate nationality because of Eber.
Yes.
And so even though the Hebrews were idolaters back there was already a Hebrew people before Abraham, and afterward in Haran, there was the Hebrew community.
You call it Ivri community. Yeah, it wouldn't be our modern term Hebrew. Could be.
But were they not afraid of Esau's wrath?
Yes, that was Rivka's reason. But she didn't tell that to her husband. Her husband sent him away for other reasons. And then, as I point out, there's a third reason, the Soloveitchik's thing, that Yaakov was Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim. He was a simple, whole person, straightforward, who sat in the two tents. What are the two tents? Tent of family, he stayed home, and the tent of Torah. He studied Torah. And Rivka decided, it's enough. That you should not stay in the kollel forever.
There wasn't a
You
Torah
should
then,
learn
was there?
Torah. I'm sorry?
There wasn't a Torah.
No, it's wasn't given yet. But they had concepts of it from their own understanding and traditions from the time of Adam. So the idea was that he shouldn't stay in the kollel forever. It's time he went out and became somebody in the world. And she sent him to her brother Lavan, which is the place, the master manipulator, where you learn how to handle this world. So that was another motivation. Now, Rashi brings the rabbinical statement that there's another reason. For example, I'll say, well, Boston the Rebbe is now most of the year in Jerusalem, and he's building up wonderful institutions in Iron Oak. Now let's say I go back to Boston, I'm telling someone this, all the Rebbe's doing it, and as Shabbos comes and I go to shul, I say, the Rebbe has left Boston. Now, I'm not telling you information because I already said he's in Jerusalem and building institutions in Iron Oak. But when I say the Rebbe left Boston, I'm just feeling the impact of the fact that the Rebbe left. Not of where the Rebbe went, but the fact that he left this place. Boston just isn't the same anymore. Okay? So, therefore, Rashi says we learn from this, since God bothers to say, we already know he's in Padanaram, or he's on the way there, as Mary would say. So God tells us, Yaakov left Beersheba. Beersheba just ain't Beersheba anymore.
That doesn't make a lot of sense, because you said he came from Hebron. And just passed through Beersheba.
Yes, that's the other drush. I'm saying there's two drushes. There's two different drushes. And then you look at the Ramban, there's all kinds of Cheshbon as to where they actually lived, whether it's Hebron or Beersheba, they went back and forth. But the one drasha says they paid a visit there, and I don't know. I don't know if the two are incompatible. The two may not be incompatible. My grandfather remembered when he saw Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan riding in a carriage in the street or something. He saw his face and made such an impression on him. So even if Yaakov only visited Beersheba, he's gone. He went home. Imagine Shlomo Carlebach flew in for a 2-day consciousness-raising Torah session, and you're saying Shlomo's gone? True, he was only here 2 days, but the place was different for those 2 days. So the two are not necessarily incompatible with each other. So that's what Rashi says, Yitzia Tzadik Osav Oshem Al Makom. That when a tzaddik leaves a place, the city just isn't the same. And bear in mind, if you assume Yitzchak was also in Beersheba, if you assume that, then even though Yitzchak was there, Yitzchak was old, he wasn't functioning or inspiring so much already. So when Yaakov's gone, there goes the city, down the drain. Where did we have the, and then you would say, and he went to Haran, naming the city, not just Padan Aram. Could be like Mary, telling you where exactly he wound up, that's possible. Or very simply, Vayelech Harana, actually Vayelech Harana is he's on the way to Haran, not the here. To tell us this new city is going to be a different place now, Haran, when Yaakov comes. I mean, that would be the other half of the drasha. Now, this is the opposite of something we had previously in Bereshis. This idea that the quality of life in a city is determined by the quality of soul of those who dwell in it. Where did we have the opposite idea?
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Right. By whom? Who? Lot. When Lot was asked, live wherever you like, you take the high road and I'll take the low road, Abraham says. Lot chose Sodom and Gomorrah region, even though the people of Sodom were very, very wicked. So what was Lot's criteria of where you live? where the wealthy people are. Sodom was supposed to be a very wealthy place. They didn't want any beggars around because it might bring down their standard of living. And there were ads every day on the radio and the newspapers. If you seek a quality environment, come to Sodom. Beautiful apartments, top security at the door.
Probably you're speaking.
No paupers allowed. Maybe no children around, right?
Visitors allowed.
All right, no visitors allowed. If you wanted an environment for beautiful people, come to Sodom. And that's what Lot chose.
The soul that Lot might have wanted to
Convert.
improve the quality.
Yes, that would be his excuse. Lot seeks where you go for quality of life, come to Sodom. Come to the exclusive 24-hour surveillance building in Tel Aviv with high-speed Shabbat elevators and no beggars or children allowed. There's a doorman there all the time. He chose that place. And he rationalized it, in my opinion, by saying he's going to convert them all. Of course, in the end, his own family becomes corrupted. And Avram doesn't even ask for God to spare the city if there are less than 10 Sadiq. If there are less than 10 Sadiq, there's no chance they shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Why did you have to be tried to change it? I mean,
I'll tell you my evidence. My evidence is a very simple fact, which I mentioned a few weeks ago, which I thought for the first time this year. You had professional missionaries for the new faith of Abraham to teach people about God and morality and kindness, and there were 3 such missionaries: Abraham, Sarah, and Lot, because it says Abraham took with him Sarah his wife, and Lot his nephew, and the souls which they made in Haran. So simple syntax is the they goes on the preceding people. So that was my finish this year. That Lot was also, he was Abraham's assistant. He was the assistant chief rabbi, the Gehazi of the day. All right? And assistants to chief rabbis are often not the most spiritual people. Occasionally the chief rabbis aren't the most spiritual people, yeah.
About Lot being the most exclusive place. It was before Yam HaMelech became
Right.
Yam HaMelech, and so it was wonderful beaches too.
Beaches.
Like here you had like a surface paradise.
Panoramic view of the sea.
Here you had a surface.
Yeah.
Here you had a surfer's paradise, or the way Miami Beach used to be.
Fun. The way Miami Beach used to be. That's a very
The way
nice
what?
example. The way Miami Beach used to be. This place of glitter and facade and luxury and voluptuousness now is a dump. Yes,
I've
really.
never been there.
All right. And then somehow these places devoted to tigers and luxurious living and so forth,
I
something happens
don't
to
think
them.
that Miami is a down, but now,
Pretty
now
close.
people don't build anyway. It's only
No,
they
downtown
don't-
Miami, which was a luxury area, you don't walk the streets. It's really a very, very bad place. Now, okay, so Lot was an activist. He was like Jeff Segal, Mayor Schuster, Baruch Levine and all, going out and trying to win souls too. And all of a sudden you see him picking Sodom. So a reasonable conclusion is he's going to continue his work there. And what do the rabbis say? This one came to live here, now he's judging us. He was like the rabbi, the judge. He was Rabbi Emeritus of the Reformed Congregation of Sodom, let's call him. Abraham's prize student. Abraham's assistant. Right? And then what happens? Abraham, you see another indication, Abraham risks his life to save him. When he is caught in war, he's misguided. But that's not a simple sinner, brother Lot. Not at all a simple sinner. Okay, anyway, so Lot has the opposite of this concept we just brought out. Whether the presence of a tzaddik or a wicked person is which determines the quality of a city. Lot says no, it's the climate and the landscape that was like a garden of God before God destroyed it. He wants the most luxurious setting in the world. So what's the Jewish concept of beauty? Apparently the Jewish concept of beauty is not that of an external beauty, but of an internal beauty. What do we call a really wonderful Jew?
A pious Jew.
Do we? A sheiner Yid.
Yeah.
A beautiful Jew. Does it mean he looks like Kirk Douglas or Marlon Brando or Gregory Peck, to go back to your days? No. What does it mean? It means soul shines from his face. Soul shines from his eyes. The Jewish aesthetic is the aesthetic of the soul. And one thing better about that aesthetic, better than the best painting, better than the fanciest food, better than the most beautiful flowers. It doesn't wilt. All physical, external beauty. All right, Sarah's is beautiful and 20 is at 7. According to that drush, we don't say what happens after 20. And even the one that she's as beautiful, 100 is at 20, but what happens when she's 120 already? There comes a time when the external physical beauty of any kind, of anything, goes to pot. Gradually, maybe not completely, but still it's basically gone. The internal soul beauty, on the contrary, grows and grows and grows, and in a sense becomes part of infinity and never dies, even when the body of which the soul is temporarily connected with does die. So it's a question of immediate sense impressions versus eternal soul impressions. Now, one holiday talks about this. About this trying to resist the stress on external beauty and stressing soul beauty. Which holiday would you say? Pesach? How's it against it though? The holiday I would say is what? What's the next holiday?
No, Hanukkah.
Hanukkah. What's Hanukkah? The lights of the Jews versus the beauty of the Greeks. All right? It's a fight against Greek Syriac culture, which stressed. It's funny how this is working out. Now you see this drasha of Rashi is tying right into the message of Hanukkah. The Greeks were very beautiful with their culture and language and literature and plays and athletics and theater, but it was all externals. It was not soul development. It was not holiness. It was not loving kindness either. It was culture, intellect.
But King Solomon says that the beauty of your soul is reflected on your face.
We'll get to that on the face maybe. But it doesn't mean a beautiful face in the sense of a model for a magazine or
No, it means a glowing face.
a glowing face. It could be a big old face. There's always these pretty pictures of this old Spartan lady coming to a center to have her lunch for the elderly. And you just see the beauty and radiance of her face. Her face is all wrinkled and dried up and everything. But there's a beauty of her. Yes, it is true. It's a glow to the face, but it's not what's called beauty. Now, so the Greeks at Hanukkah, when we're reading about this concept, which is implied in our text, when Yaakov went out from Beersheba, it's changed. So that concept is the concept of Hanukkah. That the Jews fought for eternal, internal beauty, and the Greeks fought for external, beautiful harmony and design and aesthetics and so forth. Now, in a nutshell, the Greeks said, wait one second, the Greeks said, in a nutshell, that the beautiful is good. And what did the Jews say? The good is beautiful. That's the difference. A Sheiner Yid versus the world of art and athletics. Now, to go to the other side, Sheker Hachein Behevel Hayofi. False is grace and charm. Person can be rather rough and coarse, but maybe a very good person, a tugboat and an image. And on the other hand, you have Yofi, just physical beauty. It's Hevel. What's Hevel mean? Hevel means the breath. It doesn't, like I said just before, it disappears. So it's nothing to get too excited about because it comes and goes, physical beauty. Today it's a beautiful blossoming rose. The next day it's withered.
It's withered.
All right. So yet, despite all I have said, we do stress external beauty too. Where? Where do we have that? Again, the temple certainly is very beautiful. Is it just the temple at Kohanim? Or is something else?
Also, what's that temple? The golden...
Just those mitzvahs?
There were no word?
Hidur mitzvah. Every mitzvah we do is to be done with beauty. They're supposed to have a nice esrog, a nice looking tefillah.
It's not beautiful.
In the two old boxes.
Yeah, but it's beauty also. Esrog, which strikes you as aesthetically beauty. It says, esrog na'eh, lulav na'eh. You make a seder, you're supposed to have your beautiful plates on the table. What does that have to do with spirituality?
Shabbat.
Yeah, Shabbat, nice candles, it's the whole business. So somehow, aesthetics do come in. How does this work out? I would say it's by another verse in Bereshis, which speaks of the forefather of Greek culture. Who is the forefather of Greek culture?
Yavan.
Yefet. Yefet. From Yefet. Yaft Hashem leyefet. May God increase his beauty. But he should dwell be'ahalei Shem. In the tent of the Semites, the Shem, the name, the soul, the essence people, is where Yafet should dwell. Meaning that the aesthetic gesture is of value and beauty when it enhances and expresses and aids the soul gesture. But when the aesthetic gesture becomes an end in itself, art for art's sake, or, God forbid, the religious gesture is used as an excuse for the aesthetic gesture, then it becomes something profane and demeaning and which brings man down. So I would take basically, my understanding is a didactic view of art, that all the arts are means to express and really feel a certain message, a certain spirit, a certain mood. For example, you have Baruch Nafshi et Hashem, may my soul bless God. A person reads the words, he thinks about them. You hear Shlomo Carlebach sing Baruch Nafshi et Hashem. When he hears him singing that, better than I do, when he hears that, then he really feels the words more. It's not just he's enjoying a piece of music. The way Shlomo does it is his music is appropriate to the words and brings out the full impact of the words. Now let me contrast that with another one. Would you call sacrifices, animal sacrifices, a serious sublime business or like a little fun business?
No, it's serious.
Serious. It's certainly a very important thing. It brings man close to God. It's called the Korban. And it's our testimony of our ancestors is on the supreme day of sacrifices, Yom Kippur. The Kohen Gadol's appearance was transformed. He was the real image of God. Everybody fell down in ecstasy. They saw what a man could be. So the sacrifice had a tremendous power, as the Ramban says, and so forth. So that's not a subject that you would treat like playing little games. Now, let's say there's a chazan, and he likes doing funny things, pleasant things with his voice. So what does he start singing? And he makes this little ditty out of it, which is almost ludicrous and ridiculous, because it's not made to express the feeling of the word.
Didn't do it that
No,
way.
I'm sure not. That's
But
what
they
was
had a wonderful choir, Silverman.
Yeah, right.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. There are some chazonim, as I mentioned, Shlomo was a contemporary example, Yosef Rosenblatt. There are some chazonim who you really felt the power of the words. It was the Greek aesthetic serving the Semite soul. But there's others who just use the holy words as an excuse for their singing a little song or showing off their voice or repeating something 10 times, where the repetition does nothing whatsoever to enhance the meaning. That to me is an absolute profanation of Torah, such chazos. Actually a profanation, because it's using Torah as a vehicle for the arts, which are the second-rate thing, which are the maidservant, which are that which is to enhance the soul. Okay? So if you take this distinction, what is it?
Their work, some of them just do it for their work.
Yeah. And then when you sense that is when there's no connection between the music and what's being done, all right? And you get almost ridiculous situations too, where something happens to be put to a song. Oh, I don't know. This is a nice song, nothing bad. You take Kela Del Kela it's very pretty, but then when you give that more space than Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, there's something wrong. Some places, they will knock off the most important parts of the service, and relatively unimportant parts will get huge stress because they happen to be the subject of a song. It's very interesting to watch Chazanim. What do they decide to accentuate? So this concept from Yavan, Yefet, dwelling in the tents of shame, and this is my God, the verse for Hidur Mitzvah in Shirat Moshe, Zeh Keli V'Anveil. This is my God, and I will glorify Him. I will do things of glory, of artistic beauty to Him. But it doesn't start with, I will do beauty and I relate it to God. No. It starts with, this is my God, and then I will glorify Him. So the soul impulse, the soul understanding is what comes first. Then to give it a form that people will be able to appreciate it, so you clothe it in a beautiful artistic setting. Okay? The setting is not the essence, it's the jewel. You don't design the jewel for the setting, but you design the setting for the jewel. Just occurred to me a good example. All right. So I would say what we see here is a bit of the Jewish view on art and aesthetics. And that way, all aesthetics in the world should be taken. When God does do things, it says, we don't just say Tzur Olami, but a Vav and a Yud are pretty much interchangeable. The Vav is an extension of the Yud. And the Gemara Medrash says, don't say God is just Tzur Olami, the rock, the foundation, the strength of the world, but God is also Tzayar Olami. God is the artist of artists, right? And if art is done in a soul connection, then the art itself is a very holy thing. Where do we see that? By whom? B'Tzalel. B'Tzalel, God is filled with all understanding and insight in the Spirit of God to do all manners of work. So again, but B'Tzalel does not do art for art's sake. B'Tzalel does it as a way of beautifying and enhancing the holy message of God.
What about the holy artist assistant? He's always overlooked.
Also, thank you.
He's always overlooked.
Not as Barry's around. Yes. So you have a holy artist. I give Karbach as an example. The paintings I have of Elias Sukkot would be of that nature. There are a number of people where you clearly feel the Spirit of God much better through their art than you feel it if you just talked about it or thought about it. But when it's the other way around, when there's people who enjoy doing their art and use the religious things as sort of an excuse to do it, again, I say it's a profanation. Okay, onward. So we did nicely with that verse. He hit the place. What world is that talking about? What place? Of course he's in the place. You're always in the place. Again, I'm showing you why the rabbis have to show special messages here. Because in the normal sense, it doesn't make sense. There's no place referred to. No place referred to. So the place that's called Hamokom before this is by the Akedah Yitzchak, Har Moriah, the Mount Moriah, the holy site. And that's what it's obviously talking about here. He hit that place. That's the place that's called the place before. And he spent the night there because the sun went down. Well, that's strange too. Of course, if it's night, the sun is going down. So again, the rabbis deduce this was just not an ordinary sunset. This was like the days of Yeshua with the sun standing still of the sun. And this sun suddenly set. Something very mysterious happening here. And he took from the stones of the place and put it under his head. Some say all the 12 stones which were taken from the altar of Isaac, which would represent the 12 tribes which were to come from him, were united as one stone under his head. When he fell asleep there. And he dreamt. And in his dream was a ladder reaching from earth and its head to heaven. That there is a ladder, there's a connection. That's Yaakov's message. That's the message of the land of Israel, named after him. Kimei Hashemayim al haaretz, as days of heaven upon earth. As Rabbi Avigdor Cohen put it in his book, touching heaven, touching earth. That's the function of this ladder. And the angels or energy forces, the word forces of God, were going up first and then coming down on them. What's the idea? That they're special emissaries of God, angels, whatever term you want to use, God's forces in the land of Israel. When you go out of Israel, your connection with God is a different one. So the Israeli angels went upstairs because their job was done with Yaakov. He's about to leave. And the diaspora angels came downstairs. And then God was standing alav. Alav could mean on it, at the top of the ladder, or alav above him. And some say it's that the angels represent all the other people who work indirectly through the forces of nature and all God's angels going up and down. But God stands directly over Yaakov. The Jewish people have direct contact with God. As the title of a book published here was, You Take Jesus, I'll Take God. Right? Very simple.
Yeah.
You take Jesus, I'll take God. All right? And even within Judaism, you have different stresses. Hasidic groups will stress the Mashiach, the great Rebbe, the great teacher. Misnagdim will quietly await for God's reappearance. Okay.
Can we suggest you express it how long?
I'm sorry? Yes, that's what the Ramban says anyway, that Bet El here, the Vilna Gaon points out here that there were 3 places named Bet El at least. And the house of God was a common name, simply. So there's a lot of places called Bet El, and of course the house of God is one of the places that's called the house of God. Right?
Well, isn't it something that says between, like for instance, point to Bethel, because in the 35th chapter of Bereshit it mentions Luz too.
We'll get to Luz in a moment. Hold that. Then he said, I am God, the Lord of Abraham, your father, and the Lord of Yitzchak. The land which you are lying on, I'm giving to you and your descendants. So somehow they say like the whole land was under the spot he was lying. I mean, God's not giving him and his descendants just those few inches. You could say it's Har Maria. It means the holy mountain, the Beit HaMikdash site. Or that somehow the whole land of Israel in his dream was under him. This is a dream, remember. So anything can happen in a dream. And what is unusual about the sentence, though? He said, I am God, the Lord of Abraham, your father, and the Lord of Yitzchak.
I'm the father.
Yeah, what's unusual about that? He's not.
He's not his father.
Right. Who's his father?
It's
Yitzchak. So what do you learn from this person?
in the Bible,
Yeah, because Abraham is Yaakov's real father. Yaakov, in terms of who he learns from it, who he relates to it, who he loves, this often happens, that a son and a father don't somehow relate, and the son does relate to the grandfather. So we see at this stage of his existence, Yaakov's father image was not Yitzchak, but Abraham. It's not the God of your father, Abraham, and the God of Yitzchak. It's not Yitzchak, it's somebody not related. Because at this moment, Yitzchak doesn't really understand what Yaakov needs. His mother, Rivka, does. As I point out, doesn't mean that Yitzchak doesn't love him. Yitzchak had saved the special covenantal blessing and the blessings of Israel only for Yaakov. But he thought Yaakov should sit and learn, and Esav should run the world and tithe at the black tie, red lentil dinner, which they give in honor of him every year, and even give tithes from his salt. Fine. That was the concept of Yitzchak. But Rivka says, no, Yaakov's not going to be really somebody until he gets out of that kollel, gets in the world, and deals with it on its own terms, and is able to remain a stranger, someone whose heart beats to a different drum, while being very much part of his environment. In Lavan, Garti. I was with Lavan, but I was a stranger, he reports at the end of his whole experience. Okay?
Is Rivka a little bit materialistic?
Is who?
Rivka a little bit materialistic because she immediately consented after she received such gifts. Resulted, so there was great wealth in the man she was going to marry.
There was great wealth, and something happened to her in the meanwhile, because we see Yaakov gets there without a penny.
Yeah.
Well, that's for Rachel. But Rivka,
Yes. Rivka got big gifts.
she's a bit materialistic. She saw the wealth that Eliezer brought.
I would say not, because what does Lavan want to do? That's a good question. What does Lavan want to do? Lavan wants to keep the little girl there. He says, we'll send her later. She's young. She's a young girl. She cannot leave her mother. So, and she said, I'll go. Now, she's got the gifts already. She's got the stuff.
How old was she?
3.
Some say she was 3. This is, I have a hunch. Yeah. I have a hunch if someone does not believe she is 3, they will not burn in hell. That's my hunch. Now, some people might tell you they will burn in hell because the rabbi said she was 3.
It's hard to believe she is.
Yeah.
If you get to her, will you go? And then it wouldn't be such a decision to appear.
Yes, there's a lot of arguments against her being 3. There's one argument for it. The next verse, which is actually not the next verse, last week's Seder, that he prayed for her after 20 years of marriage. Now, when you're 10 years without a baby, it's time to do something about it. But if she wasn't able to have a baby for 10 years, she was only 3. You see, one way this fits very nicely. Then, from the time she's 13, you begin to worry. And when 10 years go by, then you pray for her. 13 is about when she could have a baby. In the good old days. Women were really women before they spoiled them with modern education. Okay, now, your seed shall be as the sand of the earth. Ufaratzta. What's Faratzta? 770. Ufaratzta, all right? It equals the address of Lubavitch. Faratzta, you shall spread out. Of course, Faratzta also means you be sort of wild. Ufaratzta, Yom HaMakeim HaMatzavon HaNegma, that's their theme song. And all peoples of the earth will be blessed in you and your seed. So what are you spreading out for? This is the Rambam that we read, the end of the Mishnah Torah, that the Jews don't want all this great blessing and influence in order to conquer people and take their money or exploit them. But our faratzta is to spread God all over the world, to help people, not to use them. So they will be blessed in you. It's not just faratztas. You will spread out, they will be blessed in you. And when we do spread out and conquer more territory and rule over Arabs or whoever it is, it has to be in such a way that we will be a blessing to them. If it's not, then we're not doing our job and there's no reason for God to favor us, because then we're just like them. All right. So anyway, they darshan that faratzta is 770, which is Beit Mashiach. Actually, it should be Beit HaMashiach, but that won't be 770, so you can't do that. But then someone told me that if you take this verse and figure it out, it also equals the address of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America on Broadway. All right. Now, that's right. That's exactly what I'm trying to show you. And behold, I am with you, and I will guard you in all that you're going, and I'll bring you back to this very land, because God says, I shall not forsake you, Yaakov, my darling, until I have done all that I have spoken about you or to you. What does that imply? That someday God will forsake you. If I say, I won't forsake you until this happens, that implies when it happens, I will forsake you.
That's what you need. That's what I need.
What?
That's the answer. God tells Yaakov, I will protect you and guard you, and I will not forsake you until it happens that all nations of the world are blessed through you, and you have spread to all the world, and once they're all blessed through you and realize it, then you won't need any special protection from God anymore. So then God can just be with everybody. But meanwhile, he has to specially help the Jews because they're specially persecuted. Remember, says God is always with the persecuted, even when the righteous persecute the wicked. As they're entering their movies on Shabbos and someone comes and throws a rock or screams, Shabbos, God might feel sorry for the guy who's entering the movies. Really.
Katapatam was better to be the persecuted
Right.
than the persecutor.
That's why I always like to daven with the bellsman and with the kotel, because the Badatz is always persecuting them. The Badatz is always persecuting everybody. So we should always try to buy things with a hechsher of the Rambam. Vayikatz Yaakov Mishnato, and Yaakov got up from his sleep. Vayomer Achei Yesh Hashem Hamakom Hazeh. God's presence is here, V'anochi lo yerdati, and I didn't know. Or, of course, someone asked me yesterday, he wouldn't know. I mean, he knew about this holy place. But V'anochi, he didn't sense God's imminent presence. There's two words in Hebrew for I. Ani and Anochi. All right? Before he said, Ani, I am the God of your father Abraham. It's meaning I and no other God. I say, I am the one who did this. What am I trying to stress? Nothing about myself. Just it's I who did it, not someone else. But when I say I feel lousy, I'm not saying I and not someone else. I'm saying my essence, my personality, my inner experience of self is not in such good shape today. So the term Anochi denotes my essence. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. God is not just some abstract entity, some idea. It's an essence, a personality who is the Lord, your God. So here, Anochi lo yadati. Yaakov says, my inner self wasn't functioning right, because I didn't really feel God's presence at the moment. Or Anochi, the intimate presence of God, I didn't know. It comes out with the same idea. And he was really awestruck. And he said, how awesome is this place? Ein Zekim Beit Elokim. This is the house of God, Bethel. Okay? V'zeh Shar HaShamayim. And this is the gate to heaven. You want to get to heaven? You won't get to heaven on a rocking chair, but you will get to heaven through Jerusalem, through the Beit HaMikdash. And that's why Jews all over the world aim their prayers and their feet and their face toward Jerusalem. No, Jews all over the world don't aim Mizrach. Jews in Japan aim Mariv. Mariv Doroma. That was so funny. I was once in a Hasidic shul in the Tanya, rather well-known Hasidic shul, and I walked to daven, and I see we're facing Mecca. In other words, since they don't like to change anything the grandfather did in Eastern Europe, they wear the same clothes, eat the same kind of food and everything, even if it's inappropriate. So they face the shul Mizrach. And I figured out they're facing Mecca approximately. where there should have been sort of a south-east orientation in order to face more south, in order to face Yerushalayim. Okay.
But Yerushalayim is east of Netanya.
Yes, slightly, but it's essentially south. South is the main direction. It's more south than it is east, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Yaakov got up in the morning quickly, and he took the stone which he had placed, and he made it a pillar and poured oil on to anoint it, and that would, even Ezra says, the oil would leave a mark. Oil on stone doesn't get absorbed, it leaves a mark to identify it, it's something special. And he called the name of that place Bethel. Fine, no problem. But Ulam, however, Luz, Shema El Rishonah. It was first called Luz. Now what is Luz?
It's a bone.
We'll get to that. What normal meaning?
Extremity
No, that was Zohar, I think.
Sorry, I guess.
What is Luz? Do we have Luz again in this parsha? Rabbi Yaakov? Yes, we do. Where?
Is it a place?
Well, here it's a place. But I'm asking if we have Luz elsewhere in the parsha. Yes, remember when Yaakov...
That's not his name, didn't you change his
Jerusalem,
name?
Jerusalem.
That's what we're saying now.
Yeah.
But is there another use of Luz? Luz, later in the parsha, is the plant or tree from which Yaakov takes the sticks with which he peels and puts before the sheep in the watering troughs. That's usually translated an almond tree, okay? And then what Mary was alluding to is Luz also, in mystical tradition, in the Zohar, I believe, refers to a small bone, sort of around the base of the spine, I think, which is an almond-shaped tiny bone, which is supposed not to disintegrate when the rest of the body disintegrates after death. And from that little piece, God recreates man, okay? God recreates man from that little piece of bone into Chiyatam 18. So therefore the name Luz, one of your questions here, the name Luz would be most appropriate to describe Jerusalem because Yerushalayim becomes a desert and a wreck, yet from Jerusalem, God will build his entire Messianic kingdom.
In Arabic also, Luz is almond.
Oh, yes, that's interesting, to this day. Okay, so now, by Yidar Yaakov Nedeling, or Yaakov made a promise, he made a deal with God, a promise. If God will be with me, guard me on this path which I'm going, and give me bread to eat and clothes to wear, and I will return peacefully to the house of my father, then God will be my Lord. Hashem Li'Elokim. God will be my Lord. And this stone, which I have placed here, will be a house of the Lord. And everything which you give me, God, I'll give you 10% commission. All right? Now this sounds most peculiar. It is God, I'll make a deal with you. You give me bread, you give me clothes, you will be my God, and I'll give you 10%. Yes. It's 100%. It's Aser Asrelach. That's the 10%. 100% Jew gives 10% of his money. Yeah.
It didn't exactly work out though, did it? Because when did the poor man have peace? I thought, it struck me as I read it. He returns, does he mean when he returns when he's dead?
No, he lives a little bit afterwards, Yitzchak. They bury him together.
But he had the problems with Joseph. He had to go down to Egypt.
He has apparently a very brief, peaceful period. But you could say the problems with the family were so big, even that wasn't peaceful.
Yeah.
And it maybe it's a reference to the ultimate days when there will be peace in the world, and the third Beit HaMikdash will be built by Yaakov's descendants. Possible. But still, the basic problem is whatever it means, it sounds like he's making a bargain with God. God, I'll give you this. You'll be my God, and I'll give you 10%.
But he had nothing. So I mean, if he wouldn't have had bread, and he has to have nothing.
That's one approach, and not he's asking for luxuries, not asking for presents. God, just give me the means to do it, and I'll do it. Okay? Still, you will be my God implies that if you do this, you'll be my God, and if not. If he's starving, he should also be his God. He'll die, having God as his God. Yeah. So, the way to read it, I think it's the Saporno says, is like this. Not the way everybody reads it, like just it's like this. God, if you will give me bread to eat and clothes to wear, and if you will still be my God, not then you will be my God, but then, and you will be my God, if I will retain faith. He's not doubting God, but he's doubting himself, Yaakov. Yaakov is all alone. Abraham at least left everything with Sarah and Lot and servants. Yitzchak always had his parents, and then he had Rivka after Sarah died. Yaakov is the first one who goes in all alone. There's not one solitary person with him. He's coming to a strange and hostile environment. He is all alone. Under those circumstances, separated from his family, separated from Kedushat Eretz Yisrael, the holiness of the land of Israel, Yaakov doesn't know if he'll be religious. The sincere, honest, religious Jew leaving Russia for the Golden Medina, coming to New York, doesn't know if he will remain religious. He has self-doubts. So he says, God, look, well, I should build a shul that should be empty, like a big American temple which nobody goes to. Because that doesn't make sense. Because God, if I retain the faith, if I'll survive, you give me bread and clothes, and if you will be my God, if I'll still be able to resist all the pressures of Laban, to stay and rejoin the family fold and go back to the idolatry of Abraham's ancestors, if I'll be able to withstand all that pressure, then I'll make a shul. Then it fits very nicely. So again, the you will be my God is not a promise for the other things, but it's part of the condition, if you will still be my God, because Yaakov does not have faith in himself as he's leaving. Fine. Now, and then Yaakov got going. After this scene, you think he wouldn't go already, he would just stay there in this holy place, but he was told to go. He somehow understood his destiny and safety depended on his getting out, like David running away from his son who's trying to kill him. And David says also, like, I'm like dead and poor and an alien land. David also had to run away from his son. And he went eastward. What do we know about the Bnei Kedah? They came from Abraham's descendants. Remember, the children of the Pelagshim, the children of the concubines, after giving all that was really his to Yitzchak, he gave those things which didn't really belong to him, like the money he got for Sarah's abduction and the black magic he had learned back in Babylonia. He gave those to the concubine sons, and they went eastward to become the Garas and so forth.
You know something? For instance, you know, he when it says he gave all he had to Yitzchak, but then he gave gifts to the concubines. Means before he willed, you know, all that he had to Yitzchak.
You could say he gave to the concubines before he gave it, but it doesn't imply that. It implies first this, then that. Which is why I'm bringing the Medrash, as I recall, that says things which weren't really his, which weren't appropriate to someone like Abraham, which he had picked up in the course of his development, he gave to the sons of the concubines. Okay? Then he saw a well, and there were 3 flocks of sheep there, because from that well they drew the water to water the sheep. And there was a huge stone on it, which shows they didn't trust each other, okay? And that there wasn't much water. That's Hirsch's 2 conclusions. Okay? So there's lots of water, you don't worry about saving it. And if you trust each other, you don't worry. So when there isn't a lot, you have to lock up like that. And all of the flocks would gather there, and they'd roll these stones and often and feed the flocks, give them drink, and then put it back. And Yaakov said, "Where are you from?" They said, "From Haran." Oh, he's on the way to Haran. He said, "Do you know really Lavan, son of Nachor?" "Yeah, we know him." He said, "Is he okay?" He said, "He's okay." And here comes Rachel, his daughter, with the sheep. Okay? And he said, but now Yaakov says to them, "But look, it's just midday. It's just midday. It's not time to take the sheep back in to water them. Go, give them some water, and go back to work. What are you lounging around for?" And they said, "We can't until all of the flocks are together. We got here early. This is the typical worker. Israeli workers aren't that much different. Then we're going to wait until everybody comes, then we open up the well. Because we can't do it ourselves. And while he was speaking, Rachel came, right, with her father's sheep. She was a little shepherdess. And you see the little, tiny little girls in the Bedouins be the shepherdesses. Doesn't imply you have to be very big. They don't spoil their kids like we do. And with a 3 or 6-year-old Bedouin little girl with some sheep, oh yes. The sheep are pretty peaceful. They're not much trouble. And when Yaakov saw Rachel, the daughter of Lavan, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Lavan, his mother's brother, Yaakov
Kissed her.
no, first he got up, and he just gave him such a pickup, such a lift that he lifted. He got up and he lifted the stone. He rolled it off, actually, my yoga. I'd say it probably was too heavy a lift, but he just sort of rolled it off from the mouth of the well, and he gave Laban's sheep a drink, just like little Rivka had given Abraham's camels a drink. Now the favor was paid back. I just noticed, I never paid attention, that Yaakov gave them the drink, not Rachel. And then he kissed Rachel, and he lifted up his voice, and he cried. And he told her who he was. This strange man just came over and kissed him. He's 77, some say 84. Here's this little girl comes out with her sheep. Suddenly this old man comes over and starts kissing her. So he tells her who he is. And I said, she's probably afraid. And he started crying. Why did he start crying? Because he kissed her. I mean, you can picture the yeshiva boy. He's very fine, he's very firm. Yishtan Yoshev Olali. And now he's old and his own, and so tired and lonely and depressed. And suddenly sees his little relative here, and she's so beautiful. He just goes over and kisses her. He falls. What have I done? Come on. And he starts crying. This would be one interpretation. I don't take it too seriously, but somehow there's a connection between the kissing and the crying. Now, most of them say the problem is, how can you kiss a girl who's not his wife? Simple problem. It's not the Jewish way.
No, you don't.
Right? Now, picture a new Baal Tshuva, and a new Baal Tshuva gets married, and his delightful old aunt comes over to him, Tante Devorah, and Tante Devorah comes over, oh, the wedding is so beautiful, and she wants him to kiss her. This is often a problem that the families of Baalei Tshuva have with the Baalei Tshuva. By halacha, your relatives are all forbidden to you. Are forbidden when you don't touch. Except your mother. Make an exception for mother. Even sisters maybe not. And they won't even, Mrs. tells them, tell me about your family in London. The Chabad family. Will they kiss our relatives?
Not sure, man. But then my son certainly only kisses me, no nothing.
Will he kiss an aunt or a cousin? Will he kiss his sisters?
No.
No. You see, Mrs. tells them it's living Judaism here. And you look at the Gemara, it implies, but there are statements that are still not fully. There are statements in the Gemara which say that all kisses are obnoxious, except those when parting and with relatives. So there are Gemaras which imply there are exceptions for relatives. You have this venerable old rabbi whose daughter marries a very strict young scholar. And he comes and he holds the little granddaughter on the lap and fondles her, kisses her, the beautiful little granddaughter, hugs her. And then the father objects. Like, this is not your mother, or you touching my daughter. And he tells him, no, this is different from the relative. So there are those who are strict regarding relatives. And there are those who are not so strict regarding relatives. But it's not simple. So some say it's because it's a relative here. But I'd say that the best approach is that of a couple of approaches. One, I would say this is not a sensual kiss, because it says he saw her, the daughter of his mother's brother, stressing it's a relative. And he saw the sheep. So like he responds to both of them. He waters the sheep. He wants to he's so happy to have found his family in this perilous adventure. So you're not going to say he romantically watered the sheep. He watered the sheep because he just wanted to be with his family. And he kissed little Rachel because she's his little relative. Right?
This is a tremendous expression of relief. This is
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. And then there's another point. It doesn't say Vayishak es Rachel, that he kissed Rachel, direct object. It says Vayishak le Rachel, dative. He kissed toward Rachel. And the commentaries say, I think it's in the Ezra, that implies a social kiss, not a romantic kiss. Okay, like shaking hands. So what you see at least is the Rosh Hashiva shook hands.
Might be on the forehead.
Yes, whatever. But they do not, in other words, not all physical contact between man and woman is sensual. And those rabbis and Rosh Hashivas who do shake hands with women in common contemporary, there are no celebration word. In common, Couple Rosen did, right? Hilda. And there are others. They feel it's not a sensual thing. The Talmud.
Is what mukta?
I'm sorry?
What is the word? Mukta or something like that?
Permissible.
Mutar is permissible.
No, there's a word something like that.
Anyway.
Muktzeh?
No. Something like that.
All right. Anyway, if you think of it. So you have in the Talmud a great rabbi who used to be, he was a strong man, and in the Talmudic tradition, great rabbis work and are physically strong, like Yaakov. One thing about Yaakov we see is the Ish Tam, Yosef also went to the workout room, like my son. He's also a strong man, very strong man. Only shepherds couldn't do anything. He was inspired, but still, you have to have some strength to do this, a lot of strength. So another interpretation, example in the Talmud is there was this great rabbi who used to make his living by carrying people across the stream. He would stand at the stream. They didn't have a boat or anything. And like in China, in some places, you carry people over obstacles. So they give him like a few cents. They would carry them across the river. So he used to take women also. So they asked, how can you do such a thing? He said, just like carrying a pile of wood. In other words, there's no sensual connotation. And it mentions great rabbis would dance with brides at weddings and all the same sort of idea. There's no sensual connotation. How do you judge where there is or is not a sensual connotation? I'd say each person has to be honest with himself. They have to know how they really feel. We're not supposed to hang around with loose women, be near them, suggestive in this realm of beauty which we discussed. The Talmud's very much against people who beautify themselves to attract people they're not supposed to attract. They should not care that men look at them and so forth. Men who are not their husbands. Women should not adorn themselves for that purpose. Yet there were rabbis in the Talmud who had a stand or something in a street of harlots. And they said again, it just has no effect on us. So it's a situation ethic, it seems, more than an absolute one, this realm. And it's interesting, why did God tell us? Like God apparently wants us to think about this and to see at least the example of someone on Yaakov's level that he doesn't mind kissing Rachel. Doesn't mean he does it every day, but when he meets her at this great emotional moment, so he kisses her. Or my original explanation, that's why he cries. So the crying can be relief also. Different ways of interpreting the crying.
It could be out of joy also.
Yes, we cry for
It's
joy.
also an
But see,
expression.
all these
Both
things,
things are
is why does the Torah tell us? The Torah does not describe to us physical circumstances or history. I'd love to know what Abraham was like before 75. We have traditions. The Torah skips it because it's not directly relevant to its message. So anything that's stated in the Torah should have some moral message, some teaching. And we have to, I'm trying to find things in this kissing and crying business.
It's an emotional expression of appreciation. My God, this man who was alone so long suddenly finds not only a relative,
But a lovely one.
but a loving one at that. So crying is an emotional expression, as is kissing.
Well, that was my first suggestion. Yeah.
What?
It's like a kiss from the cheek. It's,
All right.
Guilty. That's right. Asking for
Okay. Who knows? So she ran she ran, she was enthused, and she told Lavan. Lavan came running out, and he kissed them, and hugged them. Now he hugs. You know, that itself is a good point. It doesn't say he hugs Rachel, just he kissed it. I also imply like some sort of kiss on the forehead or something like that. Because Lavan hugs, he doesn't. The rabbi, then why is the Torah bothered to tell you that Lavan hugs? Very good.
Feel him from the outside.
See how the rabbis get it? Why? He hugged them. Just hug them doesn't imply anything. But why does the Torah bother to tell you he hugged them? So there's a significance to that hugging. The significance is he's really wears them up. He remembers when Elazar came with 10 camels full of gifts, and all they got out of the deal, here's this guy, you see, he's got nothing but the clothes on his back, maybe a stick in his head. So he hugs him to try to feel, like the Rosh Yeshivas types who hug the Bachar and comes back to make sure he doesn't sit his on. All right? And he brought him to his house, and he told Laban everything. And then Laban said, look, you're my flesh and blood. Stay a month. Stay a while. And Laban says, it's not right then, after he was with him a month, it's not right you should work for me. Apparently he was working, and he just let him sit around. You should work and get my wages. What's your wages? Well, Laban had 2 daughters. The older was Leah, and the little one, Rachel. Or maybe the greater one was Leah, and the more childlike one, Rachel. I'm just thinking of the New Translation. And Leah had soft eyes. All right? Einei Leah Rakot. We're ready at verse 17, 29:17. But Rachel, Leah Yafat Torah Yafat Marash. She had a beautiful form, a beautiful face. Rachel was really beautiful. What does that mean? Leah's eyes were soft. There's a country.
She had a squint. Yeah, had
Well,
a squint.
wasn't this
Crying. She cried.
They were warm and soft. That's one. That's what Rashi brings. But
She was cross-eyed.
the Targum Onkelos translates it as beautiful. Soft eyes, tender eyes, beautiful eyes. So if you read it that way, Leah had beautiful eyes, but that was it. And Rachel had everything else. And at this point, Yaakov appreciated not the beautiful eyes, but the everything else.
It says Leah had weak eyes.
That's one
Yeah,
translation. That's why
translation.
I translated it as soft. Rach is soft.
Means cross-eyed.
It means soft.
What
That's
does
all it
Concordance
means.
you say?
Huh?
I have to look it up. The
I don't know what the
Concordance.
Concordance is. There is one other place where Rachel occurs. I think it's there in the sense of nice, of beautiful, soft, tender eyes. So, Rachel, the Targum Onkelos translates it as beautiful. She had beautiful eyes. And, all right, but Vayehav Yaakov et Rachel, he loved Rachel, and he said, I'll work for you 7 years for little Rachel. Your daughter, Rachel, the small one, implied he specified. He could just say for Rachel, for your little daughter. He suspects Laban already of trying to do something. He says, I work for her. Rachel, bitcha ha katana. And Laban says, okay, here's a funny expression. Tov, titioso lach, titioso lishacher. Better give her to you than give her to a stranger, to another man. That's a funny way of answering me. You should say, okay, or I'm delighted. Or he says, well, better give her to you than give her to another man. That's a funny way to talk, right? Very strange. And he says, stay around, hang around. He doesn't actually say, I'll give her to you. He says, better give her to you than to someone else. But he doesn't say, I will give her to you. It's like, he's a real trickster. He has a certain integrity too. He won't say a lie. But now, does anyone know a proof from this verse that indeed he does not intend to give Yaakov Rachel? Right, for this we have to go into Kabbalah and the secret message behind the message, the numerical equivalent of these words. Now, each letter in the Hebrew alphabet has a numerical equivalent. Aleph is 1, Beis is 2, and so forth. However, when we say Lamed is 30, is Lamed really 30? Or could you say Lamed is just 3? It's 3 tens. Okay. 30 is not really a unique entity so much.
How do you get 30? Lamed is 30.
Yes, I'm saying when I say it's 30,
Then Kabbalah, you keep reducing.
I'm saying basically that it's 3 tens. The zeros aren't the essence of the number. It's a 3 is its essence, all right? So therefore, Gimel and Lamed would really have the same, or Shin, they'd all be 3s in this system called Mispar Katan, where the essential number, the prime number, is what is stressed and not how many zeros or decimals happen to follow it, okay? Now, taking it that way, it says Tov, good, Titi, give. Titi is funny, it's giving, it's a participle. It's hard to tell what that verb is. It's a funny verbal form. He doesn't say look, tent, he says Titi. Titi in this system is what? Tuf is 400, which is 4. Tuf is 4 is 8. And Yud is 10, which is 1. So it's 9.
That's every speculation.
Oh, it is, but it's very interesting. TT comes out to be 9 in this basic number system. Me TT, then giving her to another. Me TT is the same as TT 9 plus the mem, which is normally 40, but for this system it's 4. So it's 13, right? Leah in this system is 3 and 1 and 5 is what? 9. And Rachel is 2 and 8 and 3, which is 13. Tov, TT, the 9, the Leah, Lach, will be to you. Me, TT, the 13, Rachel, Leishacher, will be given to someone else. So at an unconscious hidden level in this verse is implied what's in the perhaps unconscious hidden level of Laban's mind to give Leah to Yaakov and Rachel to somebody else. Okay?
Why did Rachel have the mandrakes?
We're not there yet. And Yaakov worked 7 years for Rachel. It was like a few days for him. He didn't think it was a steep price. He named the price, actually. When they only settled on that. He thought it was nothing. That was why they should try for 1 year or a few months. And Yaakov told Laban, give me my wife, my days are finished, and I will come into her. All right, again. Vayomer Yaakov al Laban hava esishti ki malu yamai vavo ela. This expression vavo ela, I will come to her, I want to sleep with her, seems rather crude. The biblical style is, I will know her, or I will marry her. He could have said something. He says, I will come unto her. Very strange. So Rashi says, because he's stressing he must have sex relations with her, because he's 84 years old at this time. And if not now, when? He's afraid he'll be able to have children. So that's why he stresses the sexual act, not that he's craving the sexual act, but simply this is the last chance to have children. One of my pupils last night thought very simply, he's so old, he's never been married and all. And he's saying that he is impatient, because it's normal, the person should have sexual satisfaction. A third interpretation, I think the Ramban brings, is a very interesting one. I will come to her. Every night Yaakov would finish his work. Where would he come to? The workers' quarters, wherever he lives. He says, I want not to come to her body. I want to come to her home. And what's he telling Laban? Don't be afraid. I'm not going to take her and go home. No, I'll stay around. I won't take her back to Israel. But I want to come to her house. I want to be my own house. That's the Ramban. Okay? Interesting. Anyway, but the verse is problematic. All right? Next. Vayasof Laban and Kol Anshe Makom. Laban gathered all the men of the place. Here's the society report of the wedding. Is it important? No. Why should the Torah mention he gathered all the men of the place? It doesn't tell them he served, how many tables there were, how many courses. All of a sudden it says he gathered all the men of the place.
Maybe because it's a vote. You know, when you make a vote.
Oh, this is the board.
Yeah.
They had a board. They were concealing. But Ayas Mishnah, they made it big party. This is the wedding. This is not the board. Yeah, this is the wedding ring. Vayiba'achem at night. Vayikach et Leah Vito. He took Leah, his daughter. It's interesting. It says his daughter. Very interesting. Maybe it's enough if he takes one of Yaakov's conditions, he gives him his daughter. And he brought her to him, to Yaakov, and he came up to her. So again, here, this would tend to disprove the Ramban, because came unto her clearly means he slept with her. Not that, I would remember, unless again, you could say it means he came to her house. Vayitei Laban Lat Zilpah Shivchato Leah. He gave Zilpah, his servant, for Leah, for a servant. Why is the Torah tell us this in the wedding story? It has nothing to do with this, ostensibly. And it wasn't the morning. She was Leah. Well, we know she's Leah. I mean, she was Leah. The Torah should say, Yaakov saw she was Leah. It says, B'nei Leah. Well, we know that already, the reader. Very strange. And he says to Laban,
Yaakov was surprised. That's why.
All right.
Naturally.
B'nei Leah. Behold, it was Leah. Okay. But you're saying it's not telling us on the fact that it was Leah, but his surprise, his reaction, right? I'm going to use that in a moment. Vayomer al Laban. He said, look, what'd you do to me? I worked for Rachel. Why did you trick me? Just relax. It's a local custom. that you should know about. He brings the laws, no excuse. It's not in our place to give the young before the oldest daughter was married first. That nonsense which has condemned a lot of younger daughters to terrible things. Loneliness and all, they could have been married just because this, in my opinion, absolute nonsense. The older daughter must get married first. Fill this week, and then we'll give you the young one. Just spend a wedding week with Leah.
So the daughter's
Shavuot sounds, I think, it means the 7 days
It's not
or so.
nonsense, it's very painful to the, it happened in my family,
Yeah.
for the older ones to see the younger ones.
It may be painful, but that's...
Very painful to the
But
younger
it
ones.
happens very often.
But the pain of the younger one who should be healthy and married and happy is worse if because of this she can't be married. And the other one shouldn't take it that way, or she's married. And then I'll give you this one too for another 7 years. He's going to give her right away, apparently, next week.
That's
All right? And Yaakov did it, and he fulfilled the Shavuot zone. And then they gave him Rachel, and Rachel got a servant, Bilhah, and he came also to Rachel, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he worked 7 years more. So apparently he got Rachel right away, a week later. Now, so the rabbis say, what happened here? He tricked them. How did he trick him? I mean, Yaakov, we saw before, suspects love with going to trick him.
It was
So
dark.
there's some star. Yes.
Her face was
Do you
covered.
believe this? This is Dale's like, yes, it was
Her
dark.
face was covered.
So who's
You
the-
can't see. If it's dark, you can't see.
You wouldn't know.
Her face was covered, wasn't it?
You wouldn't know the
His
difference.
face was
That's
not
All right. You don't talk all night? You don't talk all night?
Yes.
The night of your wedding, you don't say a word?
It could be,
Wait. So the rabbis say there were signs. Yaakov was afraid of a trick at the wedding, so he gave signs to Rachel that she should indicate. And Rachel felt so bad, as Barry said, for the older sister, that she gave away her life and gave away the signs that she might wind up with Esau. So that her sister should not be embarrassed. This is the teacher. You should almost kill yourself rather than embarrass someone. Yes, Sadekis. I question that. I question this moral message. Ooh, I could be Sadekis on someone else's husband. Do I have a right, because I don't want my sister to be hurt, to have Yaakov hurt? Excuse me.
Because he wanted, he saw.
Fine, but Yaakov wants Rachel. How can you say this is a moral act to not have blame be embarrassed? If you're sacrificing yourself, all right. If you're sacrificing Yaakov, Yaakov does not want to be married to Leah. And think of the embarrassing ways to go happy afterwards the next morning when Yaakov goes around yelling, I don't want this woman. So I would say that the moral thing is so clear. Excuse me.
I don't know if it's the moral.
Yeah, here. And I wouldn't even say the story makes sense. Because frankly, and the rabbis, to make it a little stronger, some say that Rachel was under the bed. And every time he'd say, oh, isn't it wonderful, we're finally married, darling? From under the bed, we come a little kiss.
yeah.
That answers my question. That answers my
They
question.
slept on the floor.
If they slept on the floor, you got a problem. But apparently not. No, that's not correct. It's not correct because Reuben takes his father's couch, his father's bed, away from the tent of Bilhah, wants to put it by Leah. So there is a bed, there is a mitzvah. So and this concept of, yes, I'm showing you, I just showed you they did, and then shortly after. And then in the Gemara, it also mentions one case similar. I feel I should mention it because I'm sure somewhere, someplace, some great rabbi, while the Jews were being persecuted in Europe or something, thought of a connection between these two things. That in the Gemara it mentions that there was a rabbi who had a pupil, I forget who, and the pupil would hide under the bed when the rabbi had relations with his wife. And the rabbi said, what are you doing there? He called and said, I have a pupil, I have to learn. Like you said, you must learn from every aspect of your rabbi's life. You're supposed to watch how he eats, how he does business, how he does everything he does. His way of prayer. That's called shimush. Serving him.
You see how he eats katuv, and you get a person's intelligence can be discerned by the way he eats.
All right, what's on his shirt and so forth. Well, closing, there's a story to tell about that from the remains on your shirt, somebody could know things which could lead to a death thing. But anyway, seriously. So we have in two places in our tradition this notion of someone being under the bed when a couple are together. One is this Rachel under the bed here supplying the voice, Charlie McCarthy style. And the other one is the story in the Gemara of the pupil. This is a real big rabbi, this pupil. It's not just a regular guy. I don't remember the exact name, but he's under the bed of his rabbi as an understudy. Now, the question then is, I still say, with the understudy and everything, with the darkness and the lights, with the whole scene, I still say it's incredible to believe, by common sense, that these women who are so different, Rachel and Leah, he's already 7 years in the place. And one he loves and the other he really can't stand, that Yaakov could be fooled the whole night. And he wouldn't recognize who it is. I don't care how dark it is. It's incredible.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry? That he's a... Yes.
Excuse me. I think of one thing about what happened, how Lot laid with his daughters. His daughter.
I said he was drunk.
That may have been
When
what
a
happened.
person is drunk,
That may
he
have,
doesn't know or remember.
excuse me. It may have been that at the wedding.
You got you.
Yeah.
By the way, it
He
was
could have been drunk just like Lot's
I
daughters.
would say if that were the case, the Torah would have said it, because that would have been the most relevant fact. I would not assume he was drunk. I would not assume so. But it's an interesting.
You know, and then with all this joy.
That's a very interesting idea.
You know,
we do have a parallel case, as Danny mentioned,
might have
where
been-
someone had sexual relations with someone without, not only did he not know who it was, but he didn't even know the whole thing.
Thinking of the one he loved and he was drunk of happiness, you know.
But still, he didn't fall asleep instantly. So before he falls asleep or anything, he's with her. I find it incredulous. Still, what do we do? So I would suggest to you that the one question answers another. When I first read the story, I suggested there's two things here which seem out of place. He gathered all the men of the place. There's no reason for us to do
It is a
that.
stack.
We don't care. We don't care how many people were at the wedding. And two, he gave Zilpah her servant for a servant. What's that relevant to the story of the wedding? I would say like this. Picture Yaakov, all alone, surrounded by 500 big shkatzim, all right? 500 really low-class people. Ish charba yerecha with that, each man sword on his thigh. This is history's first shotgun wedding, or shotgun wedding. This point in history, Leah's brought out. In my opinion, the simple reading of the text is Yaakov knows it's Leah. It's very obvious it's Leah because she's given Zilpah for a servant. And we see later apparently that each girl's servant was like herself because after Rachel dies, Yaakov takes Bilhah rather than going to Leah. So I would assume that when he gives Zilpah for the servant, now the rabbis are aware of this problem, so they say it was that Zilpah was like Rachel and Bilhah was like Leah. And he switched the servants as part of the trick to make their story fit this. But I would say not so because we see that Bilhah was like Rachel. Or you could say she acquired her personality in the course of time, reminding Yaakov of Rachel. But I would think simpler is this, that all the people were there. Yaakov is all alone, this one little Jew boy among these big, tough, powerful people. And the same thing as Asa is Laban gathering his brothers when Yaakov goes away at the end of our story. Yaakov has two choices, either to marry Leah or be killed on the spot. He would embarrass him by making a fuss at the wedding. He would just standing there over him. That is my opinion then. What does it mean in the morning? It doesn't say again. We go back to what you said. It doesn't say it was Leah. We know it was Leah. It says in the morning, V'hinei Leah. Yaakov's reaction to it.
Right.
Gaval, it's Leah. And Yaakov is in a state of shock. Yaakov knows there's not a darn thing he can do. If he makes any trouble, they're going to wipe him out. Who knows, like they said before, they may be a little drunk, like Yaakov, but the other guy's there. So Yaakov goes through with it. He figures better married to Leah, better red than dead, and so forth. Better marry Leah than die. He sleeps with her, and then probably from the whole thing, he does fall asleep. And he wakes up in the morning, V'hinei Leah, Gaval, He knew he was married to Leah the previous night, but under the circumstances, he just accepted it. The next morning, after a night's sleep, and it hits him that he's married to Leah, and the one he really loves and wants is Rachel. Meanwhile, all the guests have gone home. They're not going to kill him. There'll be no public scandal for Laban. And he goes up to Laban, what the heck did you do? And Laban says, relax, we're working out. And they work it out. I would say the simple story, the peshat of the story, is he did know it was Leah. It was history's first shotgun wedding. He went through with it. In the morning, got his dander up again. And that, again, shows Yaakov's grace as a human being. Unlike Rav Kulitz, who says that even Rashi's not a human being, with a discussion I had with him. Rav Soloveitchik and Rav Hirsch and others believe these people are all human beings. Even Moshe, everyone's a human being. It's higher one's lower. And the greatness of Yaakov was he had feelings like anyone else, and conclusions like anyone else, but he snapped out of it fast. He didn't tolerate this for long. Right the next morning he went to him. Now, when the rabbis tell this story of the signs and not knowing and all, I would say they don't really know. There's no tradition from Sinai that this is really what happened. It's a midrash. It's an attempt to explain the story as given in a way to teach a very important moral lesson. The great importance in not shaming or embarrassing anyone or even in preventing them at great expense to yourself from suffering embarrassment or shame. It's a very nice lesson. As I point out, is actually applied in this story. It's a questionable moral lesson because they're doing it on Yaakov's judgment. But I would assume the rabbis, for some reason in the society of their time, wanted to teach that lesson. And since the only time they had the people's attention was once a week when they came for the Parashat Toldot class, so they used this story as an asmachta, as a link, as a tag, to get that moral lesson in. But in my opinion, what really happened, in fact, was, as I said, okay, why should they belong to you? Why? Because their eyes were weak, if you take that version. Leah was not such marketable merchandise.
She wasn't
Rachel was. So he wanted to get rid of Leah, who simply wasn't that appealing. All right? We'll just go a few minutes more. Now, so we're done with the wedding. We should all go to nicer weddings than this.
Don't she refuse Leah and say no, we not if you...
Apparently love was not the sort of man you refused, and that's an interesting point. Leah comes out pretty bad here.
Because even to Rivka, they didn't force her, they asked her first
Yes.
if she wanted to go,
This is true.
So why
Leah's prospects, according to the rabbis, is she figured she'd be married to the twin, and the idea of going to Esau, she was willing to trick Yaakov, anything to get out of it.
I think Laban was the villain.
That can explain why Yaakov hated Leah, because she tricked her, not because of her essence. That could be too, if he hated her. We'll see in a moment. Okay, so what happens? So he really loves Rachel, not Leah. Right now, onward. Now, God saw, verse 31, that Leah was hated, and he opened her womb, and Rachel was barren. Now, God opening her womb, when a person has a child, you don't say God opened their womb. Apparently, the rabbis say all the imahot were supposed to be barren. All of them, even Leah. They were only supposed to have children after great prayer and difficulty, but they should really appreciate them and link them to God and have their full development and be very mature parents for this great task of raising the leaders of the Jewish people to bring the whole world back to God. Fine. So, but because of Rachmalut, because Leah was hated, so God forgot about in this case. His Rachmanos was aroused for her. And she got pregnant and had a son. Now, all right, did we just say now that Yaakov hated Leah? Right? Nope.
I don't think that Yaakov was a man who hated anybody.
So, but we said God saw she was hated.
Yeah.
No, what? Hated is hated.
But
So I would answer
he
like
didn't
that.
hate her as much as he loved Rachel.
That's fine, but it says God saw she was hated. So I would say it's like this. It doesn't say that God saw that Yaakov hated Leah. It doesn't say that anywhere. Nowhere does it say Yaakov hated Leah. God saw that Leah was hated. And again, just like, behold, it was Leah refers to Yaakov's experience in the morning. He knew it was Leah. Kabbalah, married to Leah. So this same style may carry through here. God saw that Leah felt as though Yaakov hated her. Because a woman, when her husband prefers someone else, and he really doesn't hate her if he prefers someone else. He just prefers someone else. Doesn't mean he hates her, maybe like her somewhat. But she feels rejected and hated. So it's her subjective perception of the situation. She feels hated, not the objective reality that Yaakov hated her. So she had a little kid, and she called him Reuben. See, a son. God has seen, understood, empathized with my affliction. All right? And now my husband will love me. So this little Reuben was off to a bad start. He was a child who was to be a pawn in the struggle between his parents. And later his downfall is when he acts out that role and moves Yaakov's bed from the tent of Bilhah to the tent of Leah. In other words,
He said at this point,
Reuben, this child is born to be used as a way of getting Yaakov's affection for his mother Leah. Now my husband will love me, God will see my affliction. And this is his tragic destiny, to be his mother's champion against his father. Yes, which brings about his downfall later. And Yaakov says he's not good to at all. Got it, Mary?
Yeah.
And she became pregnant again. And she said, this time God has heard that I am hated. Not God has seen, right? Not God has seen, but God has heard. What's the difference? So the Abarbanel says, at first Yaakov really hated her. According to the Abarbanel, he did hate her. He didn't want to sleep with her. I don't know, sorry, he has two wives. But no, he didn't want to sleep with her. So rarely would he sleep with her. Of course, he slept with her at one point because she had Reuben. But in general, he wouldn't sleep with her. So God saw her affliction. After that, he would sleep with her, but he would talk to her and got nice. Many times there's a husband like that. He don't sleep with his wife. He gives her support. He does everything. But he speaks to her harshly because he really doesn't like her. But that's his wife. So that's the second one. God has heard. He's heard. Not seen. The actions are okay. But he's heard that she is hated. Okay? And she called him Shimon. And he becomes an angry, aggressive person. The third one, now my husband will really be joined to me. So I have a more normal marriage. Because I've had three sons. She called him Levi. And Levi brings bride and groom together, God and the people of Israel, as it said in Shir Shinim. Then she had a fourth son. Judah, I will thank God. No complaints. Not my husband will be closer to me. Apparently it worked. On the third and the fourth, she really did get Yaakov. He really did love Leah at this point. And therefore she called him Yehuda, just thank God, and she stopped having babies with her hands. All right, we'll see, she stopped. Right? So the Barbara now, I understand him now. He says, not just she stopped, but we'll know that. But she deliberately stopped. She took birth control or something. She didn't want any more babies because the whole purpose in her having babies was to get her husband's affection. She's got it. If Leah has her husband's affection, he loves her, then what problem is there? There's still a problem left.
Okay.
Up to now, Rachel doesn't complain. All right, the other one's having the kids and washing the diapers, and she's out every night around town with Yaakov. Rachel doesn't complain. But now that somehow he really loves Leah and hangs around her tent and plays with the little children. But Rachel, now Rachel saw she didn't give birth. When did she didn't give birth? She hadn't given birth, this is the fourth kid that Leah's had. No, but now that God is saying, she has insight. She sees what this means. And she got jealous of her sister at this point. Before she wasn't jealous. And she said to Yaakov, give me children, if not I will die. And Yaakov got mad at her. And the rabbi had made her sense because, look, if that's your problem, you do what your ancestors did, or your predecessor. Sarah, give me a hawker. Give me your maidservant. You'll have children that way first. And he said, am I God? I didn't stop you. I have children. And she said, all right, here's my servant. Go to her, because that's the connection. And she will give birth to my knees, implying I will be built up through her. Also, I will raise her. So this is a way, surrogate mother, call it whatever you want. So it happened. Yaakov lived with Bilhah. He came to her. Again, this word came apparently implies sex. So again, you could say here he went to her house too. She had a separate house to maidservant. I don't know. But the Rambam's way.
Enter her means that...
Yeah, came to her. It mean came to her house.
No.
Physically came to her. I don't know. I'm just giving you two possible interpretation.
No, because he's
But
used
You're
that-
it.
used to
that's
that one.
different.
She may have had a house too, this shit.
No, but he's used it before.
Huh?
He's used that same terminology.
Yes, I'm saying, in each case where he uses it, it may mean he came to this woman's house. I don't know. That's what the Rambam says.
Yeah, says he
Oh, well,
came
the Jewish is much
became
greater
pregnant.
word. None of them are Jewish. No one's Jewish till after Sinai. But these are the four ancestors of the Jews, the progenitors, whatever you want to call them. They were technically B'nai Noach. So she got pregnant, and Rachel named them, got his judge. But Rachel was happy with all this. And there's no complaints, no trouble like Sarah had with Hagar. Apparently Bilhah and Zipporah are fine women, no problems. And she called him God is judge for me. And then Bilhah had another kid. And she said, God has given me success in my struggles with my sister. I prevailed, and she called him Naphtali. Then Leah, I always compare this like a horse race. Number one's coming around the bend, number two's catching up. There's number three coming from back far. So this scene is always like Rachel's ahead, then Leah gets some kids, then Rachel gets one, and then she gets ahead. Now Leah had insight that she had stopped giving birth. So she took Zilpah, her servant, and gave him to Yaakov. And Yaakov goes along with the whole thing. He knows he's to have 12 children. It's not easy for one wife, except that Yaakov did with Mesharim. And Zilpah had a child, and she called him, whose luck has come from God, and she called him God. And then she had another kid, and she called him Happiness, Asher. All right? And then Reuben went, in the time of the wheat harvest, they found some Dudaim, some say jasmine, some say mandrakes, there's all kinds of versions. It was either very beautiful, or very fragrant, or a fertility-inducing plant, but something very, very special, okay? And Rachel said to Leah, give me some of the mandrakes. He doesn't say all of them, immediately some of them. So he says, why? It's not enough to take my man. Yeah. And some say they're kidding around here. It's simple, it's not this viciousness. It's like a friendly competition. And now you'll take also my son's Dudaim? And Rachel said, okay, I'll tell you what. It's my turn for Yaakov to sleep with me. Instead of sleep with you. People who feel uncomfortable or squeamish talking about sexual things publicly have to ban the Bible. It's a problem. I don't know they care about the little kids reading the Bible. It's awful. That's what God decided to do. So he said, let them sleep with you tonight. Okay, they agreed. So Yaakov came. That's exactly my point. Right, Yaakov came from the southern, and Leah went out to greet him. Some are critical of her for that, so that's why Dinah went out. And when the trouble came, these outgoing women should stay home, honestly. And she said, you come to me. Very direct speech. I like to know, okay, you can come to my house. I've leased you with the mandrakes of my son. And by Yishkav B'Momalayla, when he did, I think Yaakov is whatever you women want is okay with me. Yeah, just let them settle in among themselves. He's tired, he comes home from work, be this one, be that one. By this point, Yaakov is probably a little worn out from all the struggle. Yeah, also. And God heard Leah, she got pregnant, and God was with Leah in this. And she appreciated Yaakov more than
He had his
pregnant.
car and said,
Right? And now she got extra reward in Yisachar, and then Zebulun, and then after Zebulun, who's the one who does the marketing for Yisachar, he sits and does farming, and Zebulun markets the produce. And with Torah, their Torahs together, Yisachar becomes really great. And then she had little Dinah, her daughter, and God then remembered Rachel, and opened her womb, and she had a little kid, Yosef, referring to as removed, it both means removed and added on, it's a funny word. Asaf Hashem Kerpasik, God has removed my disgrace, and she called him Yosef in the future, that God should add another son. So it has a double entendre. Then, when she had Yosef, suddenly Yaakov says it's time to go to leave Laban. And the rabbi said, was the verse that says that the house of Joseph shall be a fire, and the house of Esau stubble, and so on and so forth. Joseph is he who will destroy Laban. Yaakov has to face Esau back there waiting to kill him at home. And Joseph is the final culmination of Yaakov's implementation of Rivka's dream to have Torah and Derech Eretz Yachad. And Yaakov doesn't make it to be the PM, the prime minister, but Yaakov gets a good start on the way of no longer being the Cholon, but being out of the world. And Yosef carries it on to be like the president of Israel, Chaim Herzog, who was also a tzaddik and who was also a Talmud Chacham. And now he says he goes and tells his family what he wants to do, tells Lavan he wants to leave. He says, Lavan says, okay, just tell me how much you want. And he says, you know, all the work, and I suffered for you, you cheated me, you changed my wages, but don't give me anything. Just you give me spotted and speckled sheep from the flock, and first take away that kind, so naturally they can't do. And then he does this whole routine with the lose, with the almond, and other things, and puts it before them. Rabbi Yaakov says, if you see animals, birth is so affected by what their minds are when they're having sexual relations, how much more for people? He says, this is a hint of what the rabbis teach. I have to have holy thoughts at the moment of sexual relations because how much it affects the child. Very interesting idea.
How does it affect the child?
But it's just simply, whatever is on your mind or in your impression affects the child, like these sheep affected by what they saw on the water trough. That's what made her Bach is cute. Others say that this whole thing was a mumbo jumbo and nonsense of ancient science. So why did Yaakov do it? Because, this is also, I think, Rebbe Bach, you're not supposed to rely on the nest. If the bracha only comes from hidden miracles, like the woman getting the oil by a leash, she says, close the door, nobody should see. So in order to make it a hidden miracle, he did what in those times they would have done, thinking it would help, the science of those times. And then Professor Felix, in Nature Man of the Bible, shows how there's a certain genetic, biological sense in a particular way Yaakov worked here. Anyway, so as Yaakov gets rich despite that, and his wife said he'll go with him, and he sees that Lavan's children are getting very jealous of him. Whenever the Jew makes out well in Germany or Austria or America through his hard work in industry and brains, then the other say he's taking our money and they start to persecute him. So Yaakov said, now it's time, God came to him, now it's time to really implement it. Get out, quick, before it's too late. So, and he sneaks away, 3 days' journey between him and Lavan. Lavan chases after him and catches him. He says, why'd you hide? I'm going to send you off with a nice going-away party. And music and everything. He didn't even let me kiss my children goodbye. Phony Lavan, like Abimelech and Pharaoh, why didn't you tell us it was your wife? But Yaakov knows what would happen if he would tell him he's going. And God told him not to speak for good or bad to Yaakov, because the tzaddik does not want his goodness to come through Russia. He says, don't give me a curse, don't give me a blessing, even my Bilam is a question. And we learn that from Yael, who according to the rabbis, had slept many times with Sisera before killing him. And it was not a sin because it was absolutely disgusting to her, and she was passive, because the good of the evil is horrible in the eyes of the righteous. Okay? And then he says the Teraphim are stolen. Rachel had stolen the Teraphim. But she hid them under her saddle and said she can't get down because she's menstruating, right? And so Lavan somehow accepted this, so the trickster's daughter tricked him. This is always how it happens. There's a bad trade, your children will use it against you. Esav's prophecy of doom is given by Obadiah, who's the descendant of Esav. The rabbis say the tree is ultimately felled by the axe whose handle is the trunk of the tree itself.
But why do you call it the saddle? It says Bachala.
They call it cherry bits.
Okay, whatever. I'm sorry, what did you translate?
Bachala Gamal. It's like a pillow, isn't it?
Okay, fine. So under the pillow, whatever she was sitting on.
A saddle.
Okay, so he didn't find his trophy, and Yaakov really walls him out. It wasn't a saddle.
They didn't have saddle.
Okay.
But Bilam. There's a saddle, if you said.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what is the saddle?
Saddle is anything you say.
Okay, let's put the saddle aside, because it's very, they will call it a side saddle now. And Yaakov really walks in the house and says, I worked for you, and strayed for you, and cheated me, and now you're claiming I stole your stuff. Well, whoever stole it died. Then that moment of impulse into them brought up the death, according to some. And she was, the words of a tzaddik have a powerful effect, just like the words of God himself when he makes creation through words. And anyway, at the end, they sort of come down, and make a pact together, they put a pile of stones, Galei, Sadusah, Lavan gives an Aramaic name, and Lavan invokes the God of their ancestors, the last effort to bring Yaakov back to the family fold. All right? Like a Ger, often like a Dutch boy who died in the army, the family really wants him back with them, and it's hard to accept that he's left them forever. And they made this pact not to bother each other, and he tells them not to get other women on top of my daughters. He's trying to show that he loves his daughters, and he thinks Yaakov is against his daughters. And he blessed them, and he returned to his place, and Yaakov to his path. Like Esav, who gets his inheritance, Lavan has a place. Lavan's finished. He's not doing much. Yaakov is doing great things to change the whole world, to bring the whole world back to Eden. And he's not in his place yet, but he's on the beginning of a long journey Yaakov goes on his path, and angels of God meet him, and these camps of angels, again, the Asper angels and the Israeli angels, sounds like two baseball teams, he calls it Machanayim. And that's the end of our parsha. We got the whole thing in again. And Hosea, Hosea, the Haftorah, basically stresses Yaakov is so great, transcendent, God is with me, has this great mission, and then the Jews react like the Goyim around them. Instead of teaching the Goyim about Shabbos, they adopt their stupid soccer heroes and play ball on Shabbos and go to a cheap movie. Instead of being the teachers and leaders and those who are on the path, they become the ones who are fixed to a lowly place. What did you say, Mary?
You would say a word about it in October.
I just did. That's not a word.
And then like the Israelis, the heroes, Maradona.
Well, I know, but